Hey everybody, and welcome back to my weekly reading vlog. It is Wednesday at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I thought I should probably come talk to you about the books that I am currently in the middle of. So we're going to start with Protect the Prince by Jennifer E. Stepp, which is the second book in the Crown of Shards trilogy, which is an adult epic fantasy trilogy. We are following our main character of Evie, who is like 17th in line for the throne, and then the crown princess decides to massacre basically the entire royal family, including her mother, the queen, so that she can take the throne. But Evie manages to survive the assassination attempt and she escapes the castle. That all happened in the first book. In the second book, Evie has returned and she is trying to cement her place within this castle, and she is also trying to she ends up going out on a diplomatic mission to try to get a treaty with a local kingdom, and it's really important so that they can have a united front against an outside force and everything. But this kingdom really kind of hates Evie's kingdom because in that massacre that happened, some of their royal family was also killed. And so it's a very delicate diplomatic mission that Evie is taking on. And the story goes from there. And I am really, really enjoying this. I'm now on page 136, and I really just want to get back to this book. I love it. I am just enjoying this book so much. It's just, as I keep saying, it is not groundbreaking. It is not the most amazingly well written in like any kind of technical sense, but it is so much fun, and that's it. I'm having fun reading it. So 136 pages into this now. Nothing else major has happened. It's kind of more of the same of what you would expect, and it's still really fun. And then the other book that I'm reading is James S.A. The book is called Abidin's Gate, and it's by James S.A. Corey. This is the third book in the Expanse series, which is an adult epic science fiction series. Like, it's like an epic fantasy, but it's science fiction, right? And essentially, it's really difficult to describe like what's going on in this series, but essentially in this particular book, there is an alien artifact that everybody has kind of been keeping their eyes on, and then something really weird happens with it, and so they need to figure out what exactly is going on. And the story goes from there. In this one, I'm now on page 226. So making some really, really good progress. Not quite as far as I wanted to be in, honestly, either of these books, but I am happy that I am making progress at all. I'm not quite halfway through, but things are starting to pick up. I don't know exactly where we're going to go, but that's pretty normal. I never know where we're going to go with these books. I still am having problems with one of the perspectives. I don't like that perspective. And like, I'm trying not to be like, I'm trying to let it just wash over me instead of being actively unhappy about having to read it. Because the whole thing is just that it's a perspective where that person is like basically out to get one of our other perspective characters, and I just don't love being in that kind of a perspective. So I'm still having a few issues with that. Because I don't exactly know where we're going, it is a little bit harder for me to want to pick this up because I'm kind of I guess I'm in a mood, where I don't necessarily want to work as hard to read my books, but because this is outside of what I normally like to read, I do have to work a little harder, and it hasn't quite hooked me in where I just want to sit and read this book. Which is why I've been reading like 25 pages of this, and then I get to read one chapter of Protect the Prince. And it's actually been working so well. I just haven't had a ton of time to read lately. Like, I'm finding that just kind of how my schedule has worked itself out, that a lot of times I don't have a ton of time to read almost at all, honestly. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on that I kind of need to regularly take care of. I frequently like to sit and I'm not the person that likes to read a chapter at a time, really. I'd like to read a number of chapters, like half an hour, and I don't really have half an hour to sit and read much. Or if I do, I'm like, oh, I should actually be doing something else. So, yeah, anyway. So I haven't read as much as I want because of that. And I'm trying not to stress out too much or think, oh, I have to read it because reading is supposed to be fun. So, yeah. Anyway, my goal for this week is I do want to finish both these books. Realistically, that's what I want. I think it's absolutely doable. I am very hopeful that I can do this. I will have to actually like focus on this because it is already Wednesday. That means I have, you know, 3.5 days to read a ton of pages, like 600 pages, which is totally doable for me, but it's a little crunchy. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes. But that is it. That's all I have for this update. So until next time, bye. Hey everybody, it is Saturday night at about 9:30, so it is time for me to wrap up this reading vlog. So we are going to just jump right in with Abidin's Gate by James S.A. Corey. And I did make some progress. I'm on page 282. So not as much progress as I wanted, but the nice thing is that I have passed the halfway point, which is kind of like that. I'm finding for this series, that's kind of like where you need to get, because in the first half, what you're doing is like, you're revealing like pieces of the puzzle, but there's generally not enough revealed that you can really figure out what's going on or where we're going from here. And then about the halfway mark, you get enough of the picture that it's not just random pieces, it actually forms a picture. And it's not that you can necessarily see everything or where we're going, but it's enough to kind of like make more sense. And that's where I have finally hit that point where things are starting to make sense, and it makes it so much easier to want to read this book because it's drawing me in with like the interest that I have with this plot. So that's really good. I'm really excited that I have finally hit that point. It will make this book go much easier as I continue to read it. And then I did make a little bit of progress in Protect the Prince by Jennifer E. Stepp. I'm on page 158, so not a ton, like only like 25 pages. But I will say, because I was reminded, I read in the 25 pages I did read, I will say that I really like that Evie screws up. So she's been at court for so long, and she's really good at knowing how to maneuver around the nobles and like mess up their plans as they're trying to like entrap her and all this kind of stuff. She's really good at maneuvering. And then she screws up fantastically sometimes because she was 17th in the line. So she wasn't like getting really high up lessons on how to do politics or anything like that. So sometimes, and it happened in these 25 pages, she's just like, I think that this is the right thing to do. And then she does it. And then afterwards she looks and she's like, I might have made things worse. And I just really, really appreciate that she's not perfect. So yeah, still really, really enjoying this one. And then last night I decided I wanted to read a romance, so I picked one up and then proceeded to completely finish it, and that is Teach Me by Olivia Dade. So this is the first book in the There's Something About Marysburg series, I guess. But in it, we're following these two teachers, Rose and Martin, and they kind of get off to the wrong foot at the beginning of the year because Rose is a really well-established teacher. Martin is a new teacher, and he is given like all her favorite classes, and she also now has to share her classroom with him. It's not great. But Martin is a cinnamon roll of a man, so she really can't stay mad at him. And everything kind of goes from there. I liked this book. I did not love this book. So we'll talk through some of the positives and negatives. But first up, one thing that I do really like about these characters is the representation we get with them. Both of these characters are in their 40s, which is just so, so nice. Additionally, Rose is fat, and I really like how it's handled in the text, in the fact that it's just kind of who she is, and honestly, it doesn't really make a difference to anything until like occasionally it does. So it's just like, Martin goes to like pick her up and she's just like, "Oh, please don't. I don't really want you to hurt yourself. Like it's cool." And he's just like, "Okay." And then they move on. And I just really appreciate that level of acceptance but understanding of reality, right? And so that was really good. Um I I really like their relationship, and honestly, it feels very reflective of 40-year-olds, right? So it feels like a very quiet but very intense kind of passion between these two. And I just really like that. They're very communicative, like they're very comfortable with themselves, they're very communicative. And yes, they have some growing to do so that they can be together, but like it's not really like there's no miscommunication trope going on. They do misspeak, they misunderstand, but they clear it up very, very quickly. And most of the time, like, they're the ones coming to it like, "Oh, I screwed up." They're not having a big old fight about it. They're just like, "Hey, I screwed up. I'm sorry." And I really, really like that. It just feels very, very quiet. And it's also reflected fairly well in like their main conflict, which is essentially just they have different needs at the moment and they don't know how to reconcile those needs with each other because they are in opposition. And like, yes, that is such a grown up version of like a problem. I really liked that. It's also reflected, I think, fairly well before they go to have sex for the first time because there is an explicit sex scene in this. And it's just a very quick conversation where they're like, "Hey, before we start, what should I know? And also, tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. Like, I want this to be enjoyable for you." And they reciprocate that information, and it's just again, it's a really quick conversation, but it's really nice, and I feel it's reflective of the maturity that at least some 40-year-olds can bring to a relationship. So I really, really liked that. The one major critique that I have for this book is just actually the ending conflict, which is, or not the ending conflict, the kind of ending resolution where there is this big declaration of love. And I think it's a little bit out of character for the person doing the declaration. And especially because, like, their partner didn't necessarily need that big declaration. Like, it was just the person thinking they needed it. I don't know. I don't really think that it fit as well as what the author would have liked. But honestly, they're like high school teachers, and it kind of goes along with some high school tropes. So I'm just like, meh, okay. I didn't really like it, and I don't like especially public declarations of love because that can go badly, and it really doesn't matter. I don't know. Anyway, there's definitely an argument made that it's totally fine. I think it's a little out of character, but it's not a huge critique for me. Um, and then I will also say two just kind of FYI things. And the first is that this is very heavily like school, right? They're teachers, and especially in the beginning, they're talking about how they teach, and like there's teaching words and stuff. And I think that if you're not willing to learn or like be okay with that, this book isn't going to be for you. If you're unfamiliar with like the US teaching, how the US school system, it may not make as much sense. Just be very aware. They're both teachers, they talk teacher to each other. Excuse me. And so it may be a little confusing if you're not as familiar with that. Um, and then the other thing you should know is that there's not a huge like amount of side plots that are pushing the book forward. So, and this is actually something that I am finding that I really want in a book, um, for there to be side plots. So in this particular book, it's really just a pure romance. And like, yes, they both need to grow and change, but there's not a lot of stuff happening. Like there's stuff happening at their school, but it's not really a plot driver kind of thing. The plot driver is their romance and them trying to figure out how to grow and change as people so that they can make this romance relationship work. And I don't think that that's wrong. It's I think not what I necessarily want. And if you really do like to have like other plot lines kind of driving things, yeah, there's not a whole lot of that in this particular book. So how I ended up feeling about this book is that I liked it but did not love it. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, and I am actually really excited to try some of Olivia Dade's other stuff, because I think that if there is a solid like alternate plot to the romance, that I will be totally in, because I really do love these characters. So, and then the last thing that I read is, I just really quickly wanted to mention it but not get too deep, and that is Stage of Fools by Seanan Mcguire, which is a short story set in the October Day universe. This is not anything you have to read to understand the like primary novel series. This is really just like kind of a quick one-off story about one of the characters, Tybalt, and we're diving into his past. And I thought it was really great to see like a piece of Tybalt's past, because he does have quite a bit of history that we just don't know a ton about. So I really appreciated it for that. However, we are in Tybalt's head, and Tybalt is very particular about how he speaks and how he thinks, which is not necessarily my cup of tea to read. So ultimately, I liked this. It wasn't my favorite, but I do think it's an interesting piece of like lore for this world. I believe it's a Patreon only story. I mean, if you're interested in joining Seanan Mcguire's Patreon, like you can join for $1 and get this story, but like otherwise, no worries. But I did want to mention that I did read it. I am actually starting to get through some of her Patreon short stories, which is nice. But that is it. That is everything that I have read. Obviously, my plans for next week is to get through these behemoths. Hopefully, I will actually finish them next week. I do think it's quite possible, because I've gotten to that point in Abidin's Gate where it's easier for me to read it and understand what's going on. So that is all I have. If you have any thoughts or feelings about anything I have read, leave me a comment down below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!